We visited Salt Lake City in our journey. Carson City, the capital of Nevada, had a wild, harum-scarum population of editors, thieves, lawyers, in fact, all kinds of blacklegs. Its desperados, gamblers, and silver miners were armed to the teeth, every one of them dressed in the roughest kind of costumes, which looked strange and romantic to me, and I was fascinated. Everybody rode horseback in that town. I never saw such magnificent horsemanship as that displayed in Carson streets every day, and I did envy them, though I was not much of a horseman. But I had soon learned to tell a horse from a cow, and was burning with impatience to learn more. I was determined to have a horse and ride myself. Whilst this thought was rankling in my mind, the auctioneer came scouring through the plaza on a black beast that was humped like a dromedary and fearfully homely. He was going at $22 for horse, saddle, and bridle. A man standing near me, whom I didn't know, but who turned out to be the auctioneer's brother, noticed the wistful look in my eye and observed that that was a remarkable horse to be going at such a price, let alone the saddle and bridle. I said I had half a notion to bid. Now, he says, I know that horse. I know him well. You are a stranger, I take it. You might think he is an American horse, but he is not anything of the kind. He is a Mexican plug. That's what he is, a genuine Mexican plug. But there was something else about that man's way of saying it that made me just determined that I would own a genuine Mexican plug, if it took every cent I had. And I said, has he any other advantages? He hooked his forefinger in the pocket of my army shirt and led me to one side, and in a low tone so that no one else could hear, said, Shh! Don't say a word. He can outbuck any horse in America. He can outbuck any horse in the world. Just then the auctioneer came along. $24 for the horse, saddle, and bridle. I said, 27. Sold. I took the genuine Mexican plug, paid for him, put him in a livery stable, let him get something to eat and get rested, and then in the afternoon I brought him out in the plaza, and some of the citizens held him by the head, and others held him down to the earth by the tail, and I got on him. As soon as those people let go, he put all his feet in a bunch together, let his back sag down, and then he arched it up suddenly and shot me 180 yards. And I came down again, straight down, and lighted in the saddle and went up again. And when I came down the next time, I lit on his neck and seized him and slid back into the saddle and held on. Then he raised himself straight up in the air on his hind feet and just walked around a while like a member of Congress. And then he came down and went up the other way and just walked around on his hands, just as a schoolboy would. Then he came down on all fours again, with the same old process of shooting me up in the air. And the third time I went up, I heard a man say, "Oh, don't he buck?" So that was bucking. I was very glad to know it. Not that I wasn't enjoying it, but then I had been taking a general sort of interest in it and had naturally desired to know what the name of it was. And whilst I was up, somebody hit the horse a whack with a strap, and when I came down again, the genuine bucker was gone. While this performance was going on, a sympathizing crowd had gathered around, and one of them remarked to me, "Stranger, you have been taken in. That's a genuine Mexican plug." And another one says, "Think of it. You might have bought an American horse, used to all kinds of work for a very little more money." Well, I didn't want to talk. I didn't have anything to say. I was so jolted up, so internally, externally, and eternally mixed up, gone all to pieces. I put my hand on my forehead and the other on my stomach, and if I had been the owner of 16 hands, I could have found a place for every one of them. Now, if you would see the noblest, loveliest inland lake in the world, you should go to Lake Tahoe. It is just on the boundary line between California and Nevada. I have seen some of the world's celebrated lakes, and they bear no comparison with Tahoe. There it is, a sheet of perfectly pure, limpid water, lifted up 6,300 feet above the sea, a vast oval mirror, framed in a wall of snow-clad mountain peaks above the common world. Solitude is king, and in that realm calm silence is brooding always. It is the home of rest and tranquility, and gives emancipation and relief from the griefs and plodding cares of life. Could you but see the morning breaking there, gilding those snowy summits and then creeping gradually along the slopes until it sets the lake and woodlands free from mist, all agleam, you would see old Nature, the master artist, painting those dissolving views on the still water and finally grouping all these features into a complete picture. Every little dell, the mountains with their dome-turned pinnacles, the cataracts and drifting clouds, are all exquisitely photographed on the burnished surface of the lake, suffused with the softest and richest color. This lake is 10 miles from Carson City, and in company with a friend we used to foot it out there, taking along provisions and blankets, camp out on the lake shore 2 or 3 weeks at a time. Not another human being within miles of us. We used to loaf about in the boat, smoke and read, sometimes play 7-up to strengthen the mind. It's a sinful game, but it's mighty nice. We'd just let the boat drift and drift wherever it wanted to. I can stand a deal of such hardship and suffering when I'm healthy. And the water was so wonderfully clear. Where it was 80 feet deep, the pebbles on the bottom were just as distinct as if you held them in your hand. And in that clear, white atmosphere, it seemed as if the boat was drifting through the air. Out in the middle, it was a deep, dark indigo blue, and the official measurement made by the state geologist of California shows it to be 1,520 feet deep in the center. You can imagine that it would take a great many churches and steeples piled one upon another before they would be perceptible above its surface. You might use up a great deal of ecclesiastical architecture in that way. Now, notwithstanding that lake is lifted so high among the clouds, surrounded by the everlasting snow-capped mountain peaks, with its surface higher than Mount Washington in the east, and notwithstanding the water is pretty shallow around the edges, yet the coldest winter day in the recollection of humanity was never known to form ice upon its surface. It has no feeders but the little mountain rills, yet it never rises nor falls. Donner Lake close by freezes hard every winter. Why Lake Tahoe does not is a question which no scientist has ever been able to explain. If there are any consumptives here, I urge them to go out there, renew their age, make their bodies hale and hearty in the pure, magnificent air of Lake Tahoe. If it don't cure them, I will bury them. I shall be glad to do it. I will give them a funeral that will be a comfort to them as long as they live. But it will cure them. I met a man there. He had been a man once. Now he was nothing but a shadow, and a very poor shadow at that. And that man had come there deliberately to die. And what a sickly failure he made of it. He was in dead earnest. He had heard that this air was easy and soothing to breathe, as God knows it is, and he had simply come out there to have what comfort he might whilst life ebbed away. And he had brought along a plan of his private graveyard and pictures and drawings of different kinds of coffins and hearses and such things. And he never did anything but sit around and study that graveyard and figure out coffins and such things, trying to make up his mind which kind he liked best or which kind would be most becoming. Well, I met that man 3 months afterward. He was chasing mountain sheep over a mountain 7 miles high with a Sharp's rifle. He didn't get them, but he was chasing them just the same. He had used up his graveyard plans and things for wadding and had sent home for some more. Such a cure as that was. Why, when I first saw that man, his clothes fitted him about as a circus tent fits the tent pole. Now they were snug to him. They stuck to him like postage stamps, and he weighed a ton. Yes, he weighed more than a ton, but I will throw in the odd ounces. I'm not particular about that. 11, I think it was. I know what I'm talking about, for I took him to a hay scales and weighed him myself. A lot of us stood on there with him, but really, that was a remarkable cure. I have exaggerated it a little. You might not have noticed it, but still, it was a cure and a very remarkable one. I wish you would not heed my nonsense, but simply take note of my earnest word. I think if I could only persuade one invalid to go out there, I should feel as if I had done one thing worth having accomplished. I'm really sincere about that. And if there is a sportsman in this audience, I say to him, shoulder your gun and go out there. It's the noblest hunting ground on earth. You can hunt there a year and never find anything, except mountain sheep. But you can't get near enough to shoot one. You can see plenty of them with a spyglass. Of course, you can't shoot mountain sheep with a spyglass. It is our American chamois. I believe that is the way the word is pronounced. I don't know. With enormous horns, inhabiting the roughest mountain fastnesses, so exceedingly wild that it is impossible to get within rifle shot of it. There was no other game in that country when I was there, except 7-Up. Though one can see a California quail now and then, a proud, stately, beautiful bird with a curved and graceful plume on top of its head. But you can't shoot one. You might as well try to kill a cast-iron dog. They don't mind a mortal wound any more than a man would mind a scratch.